At exactly 47 seconds, everything exploded. Senator Elizabeth Warren slammed her hand on the committee desk. FBI Director Kash Patel's composure shattered completely. His voice cracked. His hands shook. The constitutional crisis was captured live on camera. What corruption had Warren uncovered that made the FBI director completely lose control? The Senate Banking Committee hearing room had been buzzing with routine financial oversight discussions for nearly 2 hours. Warren sat behind the curved committee dais, like a prosecutor who had been patiently waiting for her moment to strike. Her signature blazer was crisp, her silver hair perfectly arranged, but her eyes carried the intensity of someone who had discovered something explosive about America's premier law enforcement agency. Across the witness table, FBI Director Kash Patel had been sailing through softball questions about budget allocations and cybersecurity initiatives. His confidence was visible, answering with the practiced ease of someone who had mastered the art of congressional testimony. But what he didn't know was that Warren's staff had spent 3 months investigating a web of financial corruption that would destroy his career in less than 1 minute. Behind Warren, her chief investigator Sarah Chen held a tablet displaying bank records that would change everything. Wire transfers, shell companies, suspicious payments, all connected to FBI Director Patel and a network of defense contractors who had received preferential treatment in federal investigations. The paper trail was devastating, and Warren was about to unleash it live on national television. Director Patel, Warren's voice cut through the room's murmur with surgical precision. I want to discuss your relationship with Nexus Security Solutions. The name hit Patel like a physical blow. His confident posture immediately stiffened. In the gallery, reporters who had been half listening to routine budget discussions suddenly looked up from their phones. Something in Warren's tone suggested this wasn't going to be another procedural question. Senator, I am not familiar with that specific company, Patel replied, but his voice carried a tremor that betrayed him. His FBI media training had taught him to deflect when danger approached, but everyone in that room could see the panic building behind his professional facade. Warren's eyes lit up with predatory satisfaction. She had him exactly where she wanted him. You are not familiar with Nexus Security Solutions, the company that received a $47 million no-bid contract from the FBI 3 months after you became director. Warren's voice rose with each word. The same company that employs your brother-in-law as vice president of government relations. The room erupted in whispers. Cameras zoomed in on Patel's face as the color drained from his cheeks behind him. FBI advisors frantically shuffled through their briefing books, realizing they had walked into a meticulously planned ambush. Senator, I would need to review. Let me help you review. Warren interrupted, pulling out a document that made several committee members lean forward in their seats. This is a bank record showing a $250,000 payment from Nexus Security Solutions to Patel Holdings, LLC, a company registered to your wife, dated exactly 1 week after they received the FBI contract. $250,000, the number exploded across the room like a grenade. This wasn't just about contracts anymore. This was about direct financial payments to the FBI director's family, while his agency was awarding them tens of millions in government money. Patel's hands began to visibly tremble as he reached for his water glass. Senator, I think there has been some confusion. Oh, there has been confusion, all right. Warren's voice carried the righteous fury that had made her a progressive icon. The confusion is how the American people are supposed to trust an FBI director who has been taking money from defense contractors while investigating their competitors. The accusation hung in the air like an indictment that couldn't be taken back. Congressional hearings rarely featured such direct accusations of corruption, but Warren had the evidence to back up every word. But that is not all. Warren continued relentlessly. My investigation shows that in the 6 months since Nexus received their contract, the FBI has dropped investigations into 3 of their competitors for alleged defense contracting fraud. Want to explain that coincidence? Patel's professional composure began to crack completely. His legal background told him to stay calm, but the systematic destruction of his reputation was happening in real time on national television. Senator Warren, these accusations are completely baseless. Patel began, but his voice was rising to a near shout. Baseless? Warren shot back. I have bank records, FBI internal emails, and testimony from whistleblowers inside your own agency. Which part is baseless, the $250,000 payment or the dropped investigations? And then it happened. At exactly 47 seconds into Warren's assault, Kash Patel completely lost control. "This is a witch hunt," he shouted, slamming his hand on the witness table with such force that the microphones shook. "You are trying to destroy the FBI with partisan conspiracy theories." The explosion was captured by every camera in the room. The FBI director, charged with maintaining law and order, was having a complete meltdown on live television. His face was flushed red, his voice cracked with emotion, and his hands gestured wildly as his professional training abandoned him entirely. Witch hunt. Warren's response was ice-cold and devastating. "Director Patel, when someone points out corruption with documented evidence, that is called oversight. When you attack the evidence instead of explaining it, that is called guilt." The committee room erupted in chaos. Chairman Brown gavelled frantically for order while photographers captured frame after frame of the FBI director's breakdown. Social media notifications began buzzing on phones throughout the gallery, as clips of Patel's explosion started going viral in real time. But Warren wasn't finished. She had saved the most devastating revelation for last. "Director Patel, are you aware that Nexus Security Solutions is currently under federal investigation by the Pentagon Inspector General for overcharging the Defense Department by $23 million, and that your FBI has refused multiple requests from Pentagon investigators to share information about Nexus's financial practices?" The final blow was delivered with clinical precision. Not only was Patel taking money from a defense contractor, but he was actively obstructing investigations into that same contractor's fraud against American taxpayers. Patel's response revealed everything about how corruption operates at the highest levels of government. "Senator, I don't micromanage every investigation." "You don't micromanage investigations." Warren's voice carried disbelief mixed with fury. "You are the FBI director. Your family takes $250,000 from a company, and you don't think to recuse yourself from matters involving that company." The constitutional implications were staggering. If the FBI director could take money from companies under federal investigation and then obstruct those investigations, the entire federal law enforcement system was compromised. "I resent the implication that I would compromise the FBI's integrity for personal gain," Patel said, but his voice lacked any conviction. Everyone watching could see a man who knew he had been caught red-handed. Warren leaned back in her chair with the satisfaction of a prosecutor who had just destroyed a hostile witness. "Director Patel, the FBI's integrity isn't something you can compromise, because based on your actions, it is already gone." The hearing room fell silent except for the clicking of camera shutters and the frantic typing of reporters filing breaking news alerts. What had started as routine oversight had become a real-time exposure of corruption at the highest levels of American law enforcement. The media explosion was immediate and unprecedented. Within minutes of Patel's meltdown, Patel meltdown was trending on Twitter with over 50,000 tweets per minute. FB corruption followed close behind. TikTok users began creating compilation videos of Patel's breakdown set to dramatic music. CNN interrupted regular programming with, "Breaking: FBI Director has explosive meltdown during Senate hearing." The Chiron read, "Warren exposes FBI corruption scandal." Fox News led with, "FBI Director loses control during corruption accusations." But it was social media where the real earthquake occurred. The 47-second clip of Patel's explosion became the most watched political video of the year. Faison Warren's official account posted, "When corruption is exposed with evidence, this is how guilty officials react. The American people deserve better." The tweet was retweeted 200,000 times in the first hour. Fayok responded, "This is what accountability looks like. No one is above the law, not even FBI directors." Bernie Sanders added, "The corruption in our institutions runs deep. Thank you, Faison Warren, for fighting for transparency." Republican senators were notably silent on social media, unwilling to defend a performance that had been so obviously disastrous. Even Trump's Truth Social account remained quiet, suggesting that even Patel's strongest political allies recognized the meltdown as indefensible. The constitutional crisis was no longer theoretical. The American people had watched their FBI director lose control when confronted with evidence of corruption, and the implications were staggering for federal law enforcement credibility. In FBI headquarters downtown, agents gathered around computer monitors watching their director's career implode in real time. Field offices across the country fielded calls from local law enforcement asking whether they could trust intelligence and evidence coming from an FBI leadership that was compromised by corruption. The Justice Department went into crisis mode. Attorney General Bondi convened an emergency meeting to discuss whether the FBI director's position was sustainable. Career prosecutors who had worked corruption cases for decades watched in horror as the nation's top law enforcement official displayed exactly the behavior they prosecuted in others. Within hours, congressional leaders from both parties were calling for investigations. House Speaker Johnson announced that the Judiciary Committee would hold hearings on FBI corruption. Senate Majority Leader Schumer called for Patel's immediate resignation. Even some Republicans began distancing themselves from the embattled FBI director. The lobbying industry went into overdrive as defense contractors realized that their relationships with federal agencies would face unprecedented scrutiny. Stock prices for companies with significant government contracts tumbled as investors worried about the implications of the corruption scandal. Legal experts appeared on cable news explaining the potential criminal implications. Former federal prosecutors noted that the evidence Warren presented could support charges under the federal bribery statute, which prohibits government officials from taking anything of value in exchange for official action. By evening, the story had evolved beyond just Patel's meltdown. Investigative reporters were digging into the broader network of defense contractor relationships with federal agencies. The Nexus Security Solutions scandal was revealing a pattern of corruption that extended far beyond one FBI director. Late-night comedy shows seized on the material immediately. Stephen Colbert's opening monologue featured an extended bit about FBI directors who can't handle basic questioning. Saturday Night Live began working on a cold open featuring a nervous FBI director frantically denying obvious corruption while taking briefcases full of cash. But beyond the jokes and political theater, serious questions remained about the integrity of federal law enforcement. Career FBI agents wondered whether their investigations would now face scrutiny about political motivations. Defense attorneys in ongoing cases began filing motions questioning whether prosecutions had been tainted by corruption at the top levels of the Bureau. International allies quietly began discussing whether intelligence sharing with the FBI could continue while questions about corruption remained unresolved. Foreign intelligence services had to consider whether information shared with a compromised FBI leadership could be trusted to remain confidential. The 47-second meltdown had exposed a fault line that ran through the heart of American law enforcement. Warren's methodical presentation of evidence had revealed not just individual corruption, but systemic problems with oversight and accountability in federal agencies. As Washington digested the day's events, one thing was clear: Elizabeth Warren had done more than expose corruption. She had demonstrated what real oversight looked like when conducted by someone willing to follow the evidence wherever it led, regardless of political consequences. The FBI director, who had been confident and composed at the hearing's start, was now fighting for his professional survival, and the American people had watched it happen live on television. The 47 seconds that destroyed Kash Patel's career had also restored faith that someone in Washington was still willing to hold power accountable to the law.